And the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello, and we are back. It is Monday, the 2nd of June, 2025, episode 103. And boy, oh boy, should we call this episode today the sum of all fears? It seems that that's what's going on over in Ukraine and Russia. Some very big news over there, and not to be outdone, but of course things are happening in the US. We've got a terrorist attack to explain as well, and we'll come back and do the Australian news. But that is getting ahead of my welcome to the other half of the Daily Australian right now. Nicola Charles, welcome back for a happy Monday. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. Pretty busy weekend, actually, Jason. I was half asleep on the couch at the weekend half watching an X-Files episode. And Scully, gorgeous redhead Scully, referenced Marco Savio, who's at the beginning of our show. And she referenced him being one of those university activists in the 1960s. So that sort of woke me up when I saw that. I would like to wish everyone happy Pride Month. And because we're having Pride Month here in Australia, while the Northern Hemisphere is headed into World War III. So that's an interesting juxtaposition, isn't it?
Isn't it? But of course, these events are all pre-planned, and so it's interesting that that is going to play out at this exact time. But we are at the precipice of nuclear war at this stage, and the reason being that due to certain protocols of the attack that Russia has suffered, it is meant to launch a nuclear response. We're going to get into that report very soon. We're also going to talk about a number of different issues. East Palestine, Ohio, nothing to do with Palestine, as in Gaza. Documents have come out overnight that exposed that the Biden government did know that what had happened to that train crash with that vinyl chloride it being exposed, that it was dangerous, and they pretended that it wasn't. We've also got an extraordinary post from Donald Trump. In fact, you know what? I mean, it is a little bit sensational, but it's probably worth it to show you right now what I'm talking about. This came out from Trump, Nicola, on his Truth Social. There is no Joe Biden. Executed in 2020, Biden clones doubles and robotic engineered soulless mindless entities are what you see. Democrats don't know the difference. What's going on there? This is extraordinary. I know many people will be following along with the 17th letter, and they'll tell you all about it, and please do in the comments. But where are we right now? And we've got a number of different stories to cover as well. A Nigerian sexting crime syndicate has been exposed. It's Australian news. We've also got the horrific story of a mother who killed her own daughter, dying as a result of becoming unresponsive in prison. We've got that as well. We've had the death of a young actor, Devon Hargis, from Boardwalk Empire, just announced at 41 from cancer. And some tourist has decided to destroy the terracotta warriors, or at least some of them, in China, in some extraordinary story that's just appeared as well as we go to record this morning. So a lot of crazy stuff. I'd have to say that it is as crazy as I have ever seen. And I know people are urgent to get on with it, but I just need to also say that one of our mottos here is that during these crises and the difficulties of what is going on around the world, when you can't control what is happening, it's important to be able to live your best life. And I know that that's not always easy, but one example, Nicola, at the weekend, the kids' sport hasn't been on for weeks up here in New South Wales because of all the flooding, and soccer, of course, was called off, but netball was on. And we always know that when we take our young one out to play at the weekend, you can't park because all the games are at one venue. So we decided to get there a little earlier, and I took a flat netball with my daughter, and we started practicing half an hour earlier than normal. And she was practicing passing and shooting and getting her foot right so she wouldn't step and all these different things. And she was pumped up, and a couple of her friends arrived, and they all sort of got into it. We did a bit of warm-up practice. Anyway, they've never scored more than 3 goals in a game. Let me tell you, they won 14-13. Their first ever win at netball.
Nice.
So So it was a big thrill for her. The kids, their life changed in that moment. They were no longer the Easy Beats, and they kept playing. And I just thought that is exactly what it's all about, that you can have some sort of, minor victory in your life at a time when you're not expecting anything. And it was through just good old hard work and effort and trying something new. And that is my little motto for the day before we get on with the news.
Yeah, no, it is really important. We had a late celebration of my stepson's 16th birthday, so that was pretty fun as well, and all the kids were around. It is important to think about that stuff, but you cannot ignore there's some absolutely enormous stuff happening on the world stage. For me, Jason, I certainly am no expert on geopolitical issues, although I do delve in and have my opinion on them. It looks to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the way I see it is that this has never been about Ukraine, actually, because it's always about what they don't tell you, not what they do show you. I feel this has never been about Ukraine. I feel this is NATO at war with Russia now on a large scale. How do you feel about that?
I think that's exactly what it's always been about. And Zelensky has been their tool all along. And of course, Ukraine has been allowed to get away with being probably the Earth's hub for criminal activity. In many ways, it can be considered a failed state. But we've known all about the biolabs, and it's not Tulsi Gabbard just saying it. It was Victoria Nuland admitting it, who was a Biden-era Deputy Secretary of Defense, who gave that one away, and we all knew about that. It is also a child trafficking hub, and we've also learnt that in the banking circles, whereby that there is a particular code that all transactions around the world have to identify them, they don't operate in Ukraine. So it has always been a money laundering hub whereby you can hide the money. So I feel
it's a jumping off. It's a jumping off point, isn't it, for World War? That's why Hillary Clinton's involved there, Jason, and the Clinton Foundation. What did we hear from her for years? Russia, Russia, Russia. She is chomping at the bit to take Russia out.
There is no question. And we're going to play a report for you now that I prepared a little earlier that's going to give you all the details of what's happened overnight with Ukraine's attacks on Russia. I'll play it for you now, and we'll come back with the latest details that are coming out as we speak. Ukrainian forces have launched their largest ever strike against nuclear triad targets at strategic airfields in several regions. In some cases, FPV drones hit their targets, while in others they were prevented. Ukraine said Sunday it destroyed Russian bombers worth billions of dollars in a large-scale drone assault on enemy soil as it geared up for talks with Moscow counterparts to negotiate a potential ceasefire. The mission was carried out by Ukraine's security service, first-person view drones, reportedly hitting a total of 41 Russian heavy bombers parked at 4 air bases thousands of kilometres away, a security source told the Kiev Independent. A source in the Ukrainian security services said the drones were concealed in the ceilings of shipping containers, which were opened up to release them for the assault. Fires were recorded on 4 Tu-95s at the Olenya airfield in the Murmansk region. 5 columns of smoke were also seen at the Belaya airfield, where the Tu-22M3 and Tu-95MS were located. In the Amur region, the attack failed. The truck with the UAV caught fire on the road. The intended target was apparently the Ukrainka airfield, where strategic aviation is also based. There were reports of UAV threats at airfields in the Ryazan and Ivanovo regions, but no footage or explosions of burning aircraft was received from there. The Defence Ministry later reported that the attacks had been repelled. The Ministry of Defence acknowledged the loss of equipment at Olenya and Belaya. At the same time, they added that there were no casualties amongst personnel or civilians. In the evening, information emerged that the workshop for assembling and installing drones as on a container was located in the Chelyabinsk region. The attack was accompanied by official statements from Ukrainian special services, which reported the destruction of over 40 strategic aviation aircraft. In reality, such a number of aircraft were not destroyed. An urgent meeting is being held in the Kremlin in connection with the massive attack by the Ukrainian armed forces on the airfields of the strategic aviation of the Russian aerospace forces. A decision will be made on the use of the Oreshnik, that being the ballistic missile with nuclear capability. Russia has been dealt a blow to its nuclear parity with the US. As per Russian military doctrine, Russia must carry out a mass nuclear strike in response. Meanwhile, Bioclandestine writes, Zelensky is sending a delegation to Istanbul for supposed ceasefire talks. The Trump administration, meanwhile, has confirmed they were not informed of the attack. Zelensky continues to sabotage any attempts at resolving this situation diplomatically. He continues to provoke Putin and allegedly tried to take Putin's life via drone attack on his helicopter. So the odds of a peace deal happening just went down dramatically. And Clandestine writes, I'm not sure how much longer Putin is going to tolerate this. Zelensky has never had any intentions of ending this war peacefully, because when it ends, he is a dead man, and he knows it. Now all eyes move to Trump to see how he responds to this attack. Hopefully this event will be the straw that breaks the camel's back and gives Trump the optics to go scorched earth on Zelensky and fully cut him off and justify backing the US out of NATO. So what comes next? After Zelensky's strike against Russia's sea and air nuclear triad system, there are only two outcomes on how this ends. One, the Zelensky regime capitulates in a full unconditional surrender, or Russia responds by launching a mass automated nuclear-style first strike attack as per nuclear triad threat doctrine protocols. So, to summarise, Ukraine has attacked Russia's strategic nuclear bomber fleet and many other targets around the country. Putin may have no choice but to order an all-out full strategic strike on Ukraine in response. Meanwhile, Zelensky's regime only understands force. It may be time to formally declare war and fully mobilise Russia, her proxies and allies into full unconditional war against the enemy. The sum of all fears. This is Jason Olbourne reporting for the Daily Australian.
How about them apples? Funny, isn't it? Remember I told you that AI machinery that has been 99.9% effective called Socrates on geopolitical events probably for the last 50 years. It's not AI, it's a computer program. It did actually predict, we spoke on the show before about predicting a world war in Europe in 2026 with 95% certainty. And I mean, it worries me because we had all that footage, which was a little bit unusual during the supposed Ukraine-Russia war, where you had all those young people in Ukraine and they were sort of partying and having a great life, and things didn't look demolished and things didn't look war-torn. And I just worry that, you know, the powers that be have known that this is coming, and, you know, it sort of protects the rest of Europe, doesn't it? Germany, France, Italy, the UK. If the focus is Ukraine, the war is between Russia and Ukraine. It's almost a psychological war. But Vladimir Putin's not stupid. He knows where it's coming from. So I don't think any of the other countries or major cities that are part of NATO are particularly safe. I find it quite worrying. You know, have they known that this is where it will end up all along?
Well, the reference to the sum of all fears comes from Q, and this was always meant to be the end game, whereby you would get to the brink of nuclear war, not unlike JFK back in the in the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the 60s. That this will be something very similar. So, if you are just following the fortune telling, if you will, this is going to be solved with Trump coming in at the last minute and getting Putin to back down from said nuclear strike. This would be where you would expect it. And so two analysts, Clandestine and others, have said that there are only two ways out of this: a full and unconditional surrender from Zelensky, which appears unlikely, or the nuclear attack. So part three is the talk down, that when Putin declares that he's going to attack, or that it's imminent, and then something backs down from there. The point being that if this is going to end, it is all about optics, and I hate the fact that we think that this could be planned in such a way, or whether this has been gamed, whether they have used new military technology, which may well be AI, it may well be a form of Project Looking Glass or something else like that, some way to predict outcomes, and it's said that there is only one way here, and that would be the sum of all fears, meaning a nuclear attack would happen. It's much like what we're seeing with the judicial overreach in the United States, these activist judges, whereby it appears that we may arrive at the Insurrection Act of 1807, in which case the military will have to arrest these particular judges for said insurrection, and then it goes to military tribunal. Again, another reference to the whole Q thing. So very interesting that these are as good as potential outcomes as anything that we've seen so far. But
surely Vladimir Putin wouldn't announce an imminent attack. I mean, if you're because someone told me the other day, someone in finance in Australia, and this seems unrelated, but it's not. Someone told me that Australia is already on a war footing. That the reason things have been so strange since 2020 is that we're operating as if we're in wartime. So that's why I talk about it being pre-planned and all part of the giant conspiracy that, we're not allowed to know about. I mean, let's face it, Bill Gates will be happy if nuclear war, even if they drop one small nuke, he'll be happy because there's the sun blocked out and that will float around the planet for the next 10 years.
Well, it will be interesting, won't it, when we find out that some of these elites have gone to underground bunkers, which will prove what we always knew, that they were built for certain people that to survive said nuclear attack. I find it astonishing that the powers that be could possibly game a scenario where you end up at nuclear war and they go underground to hide out for a period of time before they can come back to the surface. Like that's a possible outcome that you would do. Like, why not do it in the and that's all to save face and to justify not being held to account against the 6 people that are left on the surface. Again, it makes no sense to me that this could possibly be a scenario. But we also knew that this was the scenario that Hillary Clinton was planning back in 2016. It was always going to be that she was going to take Russia on. I thought the most craziest response was going to be that if she got into power and they had a false flag that led to nuclear war and they blew up 3/4 of planet Earth, that Hillary at the same time would declare that there is an extraterrestrial presence and literally go out to the galactic community and cry poor and being a victim. And that's what she would do to introduce us to this other system. But if their plan, this is what I can't understand with the whole environmental levy. And if you talk about the extraterrestrial thing just briefly for a moment, if you're trying to rewild massive parts of Earth and bring people to the cities and have 15-minute cities, are you creating this space because you're giving this new land to someone else? Or are you really justifying that we need to regreen 80% of planet Earth landmass?
No, it's colonization. It's colonization. Look, there's two types of genocide, right? There's industrial genocide, which is what they did to the Jews in World War II. And then there's a different kind of genocide, which is a cultural genocide, a soul genocide, an identity genocide. And that's what they've been doing to us, right? Because at the same time, they're doing things like welcome to country and telling us we must appreciate, these particular groups' culture. They're happy to rub out another particular group's culture, right? So this is a form of genocide. It's genocide by substitution. It's genocide of us culturally. Obviously, it's not like a hot war. It's not like an industrial genocide. And I think it's all part of the plan. And the weird thing is some of it's distraction, some of it's for real. And we just don't know. And don't forget, Hillary Clinton, Kissinger's gone, George Bush Sr. is gone. The engineers of this, likely from this committee of 300, most of them are gone. Prince Philip, who was all for this, is gone. Queen Elizabeth II is gone. Unfortunately, King Charles III is looking to fulfill his father's big dream in his absence. So it's quite concerning. But the people with their fingers on the buttons, let's say, they're up for this. And as you say, they've got somewhere to go. One of the things that was noted and a builder sort of whistle blew on it was that Bill Gates had this, $30 million underground bunker built, and it's got a swimming pool and 10 bedrooms. And apparently it's got a 20-meter thick sort of door thing where it can, even if they, fire a nuke at the door of Bill Gates' bunker, you can't get him out. And for a long time, people have been asking why these elites would be building these bunkers. And then you've got the whole Denver airport conspiracy, where there's a huge city underneath Denver airport and murals that tell you what's going to go on. Something is definitely afoot, something probably so major and so dark that we wouldn't believe it. We're still running around worrying about vaccine injuries and the World Health Organization Amendment Treaty. And that's because they want us to live in fear. They want us to live in anxiety and spend all of our time thinking about those things. And at any second, the larger plan, the larger conspiracy could unfold.
Indeed. So many stories going on at the same time, and you wonder which one's going to play first. And then, of course, for mine, I'll look at the news updates on mainstream television throughout the day, and it'll be stories about state of origin football and injured players. And it just beggars belief, and you wonder how it is so. But interestingly, this morning we had cause for our plumber. We had to book the plumber in for a leak that he came and fixed, and it just so happened that I was working on my story about the war this morning, and he happened to walk past and see what was going on, and we had a chat, and he said, I don't listen to mainstream news. I normally listen to a particular podcast. He says, but now what you've told me, I'll be tuning into the Daily Australian from here on in. So there you go. That's welcome to one new viewer. There you go. That's pretty cool. Now, we've had some more disturbing stories on top of disturbing stories. This is an Australian story I want to bring up right now. So there was a little girl. Her name was Sophia Rose. She was killed by her mother. She was 3 years old when she was killed by her mother. Now, we've just learned that the mother, Lauren Flanagan, the mum charged with the murder of her daughter, has died in hospital. She was charged with the murder of the 3-year-old girl when she allegedly stabbed her multiple times in the front yard of their home. Laura Ingrid Flanagan, 32, was charged with the murder of the 3-year-old daughter from the family's home in Moorpark Beach near Bundaberg last week. She was found unresponsive in her cell at Brisbane Women's Correctional Centre. She was rushed to Princess Alexandra Hospital in a critical condition. Queensland Corrective Services spokesman confirmed the death on Sunday night. They will assist in making a report for the coroner, as all deaths in custody must go through. That is standard practice. That is a horrific story. And that, of course, in Australia are things that we'd never, ever heard of in our lifetimes before this modern era.
Yeah, we can't know what was going on in that young mum's life personally, but nothing that was going on would warrant an attack with a knife on such a small child. I do know from my own experience of half a century and, knowing and mingling with mums that they're, particularly in this modern age of vanity and ego and social media, I do know that there is often a consensus that, particularly if you've had your children younger, although 32 is not that young, that the children have sort of rained on their parade. They've gate crashed their party, and life is more difficult because you have responsibility and you have to provide for another person and think about another person. And I always find that extraordinary. We can't know what happened here, but what a terribly desperate outcome for both of them. So poor little thing. Rest in peace, that little one.
Yeah, absolutely horrific. We've also now learnt that sexting criminals linked to the suicide of an Australian teenager have been nabbed in Nigeria in an Australian Federal Police sting. This Nigerian sextortion gang have been accused of preying on Australian teenagers, including a 16-year-old boy who took his own life. And these people have been busted in a major international sting. 2 of the 22 suspects nabbed in Nigeria are linked to this death of this particular boy in 2023. So the AFP worked within the FBI, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to shut down the group allegedly responsible for a wave of sextortion targeting thousands of teenagers globally. The scheme, which coerced victims into sharing sexually explicit images before threatening to distribute those images unless payment was made, have devastating consequences. I'm going to put up on the screen an example of how this worked. So this is a text exchange. Hey, hi, your cute vid. Hey, I sent you the pic on a different app like you asked. Did you get it? And then the response being, you will pay me $500 in return. I won't share your photo. Answer me now. Pay me now. Huh? Please delete the pic. Followed up with, once you delete once you pay, I will delete the photo. I don't have any money. How much can you pay? Can you afford $50? Okay, I can pay $50. How do I pay? Go to the shops and buy me a gift card. Send me an image of the card. Mum won't let me go to the shops. Can you believe that this is the behavior of these criminals attacking
globalization
children?
At work there, Jason. Globalization at work. Congratulations, guys. I mean, they really have created a sewer of a world for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And to think that these people consider this to be a normal job, that they probably go to work and get dressed up to sit into an office and exchange this particular type of arrangement with people on social media. I know that on Telegram, I must get a half a dozen people messaging me daily that find me and to try and start conversations. And what's interesting now on Telegram is that it puts the destination of the, if you click on this particular thing, it puts the destination of the person where they are from. And so if someone, for example, it might say that they're from Nigeria and there's a picture of a young, white lady or something like that that's trying to befriend you. So it's very interesting to see where these are coming from. So at least Telegram has made that effort. But I can't work out that social media site, how many fake profiles. It seems that probably 90% of all profiles on there are fake. And I know that from our particular page that we set up, 1 Million Mums for Informed Consent. At one stage that had 3,500 people. It's now down to about 1,200 or 1,300 or something like that over 5 years, but it leaks about 3 or 4 people every day, and I wonder if they're just fake profiles that are just getting taken out. So they never really had that. So that's an interesting one. And when you watch other people's, if you sort of screenshot people that you follow on Telegram, just take note of if their subscriber numbers are going up or down, because I just think that's a very, very odd social media site for how that works. Mind you, a lot of the information you get is very interesting, a lot of garbage, but there is some really interesting stuff that you get that you can't find anywhere else. So it serves a purpose.
Have you noticed there's no garbage on Substack, Jason? You don't get garbage on Substack. It's amazing.
It is interesting, isn't it? But you also find that you get very dedicated people writing, long form articles. We obviously post the Daily Australian there on both our pages, in video and audio format, etc. But there is very good writing, and you get a lot of doctors and a lot of other people writing some brilliant stuff. And that's the point, isn't it? And it's such a good website now because you can post video, audio, and text along there, and it's just it's completely different. That's the point, isn't it? I'm being told that on other social media sites like Facebook, they're back to censoring here in Australia. People are having a hard time on there again. Surprise.
I'm not being censored on Facebook, Jason. I don't get what's happening. I don't know if they're sort of giving me my head so that I can literally hang myself with my posts. But I'm not being censored. They're being seen by a lot of people and shared by a lot of people, sort of 80 plus people, which is a lot for a Facebook post. And I'm just wondering what the deal is here, because I was banned from Facebook for 18 months in 2020, at the end of 2020. And here I am seemingly having my freedom. Is there something about myself I don't know? There's somebody out there that's, on my team, whoever you are. Thank you very much.
Well, whatever works. Go with it. It's very interesting. Now, we've heard in Boulder, Colorado, I'm going to play you a short clip now just from the explosion, but there has been a terrorist attack targeting a group of Jewish people in Boulder in Colorado. Play that video for you.
We're fucking gone.
Stay.
It amazes me that people stay in the area, Jason, and don't hit the deck or run. Seriously.
Well, I guess each to their own. You get some that do, some that don't, trying to work out what's going on. And this is the individual involved here, Mohammed Solomon, who's now been taken into custody. There he is being arrested. Here he is threatening people in that situation. What we've now learnt, we've got a quote or a tweet from Kash Patel. We are aware of and fully investigating a targeted terror attack in Boulder, Colorado. Our agents and local law enforcement are on the scene already, and we will share updates as more information becomes available. Dan Bongino has also sent us, hang on, let's go, what's going on here? Come on, Dan, here you go. FBI personnel are on the scene in Boulder, along with local law enforcement. The investigation as a result of terror and targeted violence. All of the necessary assets will be dedicated to the investigation, and they look obviously calling for more tips there as well. And in another Oh, sorry, that's different. That's going back to Israel now. On the eve of Shavuot, the IDF operates in Gaza with great force, crushing the enemy and clearing a path for manoeuvring forces. And they are going after again because it is about getting the hostages released. So it is related to what's going on there in Boulder in Colorado. Yeah, and just one more statement here from the governor of Colorado. I'm closely monitoring the situation in Boulder, and my thoughts go out to the people who have been injured and impacted by the heinous acts of terror. Hate-filled acts of any kind are unacceptable. While details emerge, the state works with local and federal law enforcement to support the investigation, and more information as we go there. So, devastating situation in Boulder, Colorado, with this particular individual, Mohammed Solomon, being arrested as a result. Extraordinary. And of course, people just asking for these terrorists to release the hostages in Gaza from October 7. I mean, how long?
I know, but when you've got tweets like that from the IDF saying what they're going to do, that is actually causing ill will to Jewish people around the world. That's what's like I said, if you're in government or you're in the military and you've got, sorties and attacks planned, it seems very strange to me in this new digital world that you would announce that to loads of people who'd get upset by that. It's this globalization thing that I find very uncomfortable. Countries have all kinds of things going on nationally, but they are projecting those out now globally to populations around the world. And I'm sorry, it feels engineered to create unrest. And of course it will create unrest, especially when they go public and say, we want our hostages released. And I'm not condoning what that gentleman did. What was he doing there? Was it some form of gas or mustard smoke or something? Because it was strange. No one was killed in that attack, right?
No, though he was throwing Molotov cocktails into where the people were protesting. Well, the timing of it is interesting because Greta Thunberg is on her way to Gaza, and of course she chimes in.
That's the last thing the people of Gaza need.
And well, here she is right now. Let's take a look.
Hello, I am currently standing on the Madeleine, the ship that on Sunday, June 1st, will attempt to again sail towards Gaza and to try to break the siege and open up a humanitarian corridor by delivering aid like food and medical supplies. The last time we attempted this, about a month ago, the boat Conscience that we were about to board, just a couple of hours before we were planning to board and set sail, it got bombed twice, and all evidence suggests that it was Israel who did it.
Oh my God.
So now we are here in Catania, outside of Sicily, to try to continue our mission to try again. Because currently we are watching a systematic starvation of 2 million people, a live stream genocide, and the world's silence is deadly. That is why we have to keep trying everything we can, even if the odds are against us, to try to protest and do everything we can to stand against Israel's atrocities and war crimes, and to support and stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. So keep your eyes on deck, continue flooding the streets, organize, boycott, and do everything in your power to stand for Palestine.
Jason, that is a globalist orchestrated incitement to violence, inflaming violence around the world. So her best mate, Klaus Schwab, now retired and living his best life, can get his dream of a more violent world. The most famous little poison dwarf they can get their hands on. And she said she was outside Sicily, and I knew instantly there's no way that girl's going anywhere near Gaza. I can promise you that. That was an incitement to violence by the globalists. So really and truly, read between the lines. Now you know what they want. They want us fighting with each other. They want arrests. They want violence. They want what you just reported happened from Boulder, Colorado. The globalists want that, right? I hope people can see that.
Isn't it interesting, though, that it develops in real time on the Daily Australian, probably the only show in Australia today that will report it the way that we have. So it is interesting. So let's see how things play out, of course. But we have a real situation that people are being attacked on US soil in Colorado. We have the infamous extremist Greta Thunberg inflaming the scenario, people calling for the release of hostages after we're coming up to, 2 years in October. Extraordinary that this is going on, and we're no closer. And at the same time, we're seeing what we're seeing coming in Ukraine and Russia, and we'll see what Putin's next moves are going to be. Meanwhile, we go back to East Palestine in Ohio, nothing to do with Palestine in the Middle East, but we've just learned that after officials burned 5 tankers containing 115,000 gallons of toxic vinyl chloride over East Palestine, residents were sick and were crying out for help. So in September of 2023, 7 months later, Biden issued an executive order sending FEMA Executive Jim McPherson to the area to assess the community's unmet needs. But new documents from FEMA obtained through the Freedom of Information Act show extensive coordination between FEMA, the White House, the National Security Council, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Justice, voicing serious concerns about health toxins and the unmet needs of the area following the derailment. But publicly, their message was that there was nothing with those concerns. It showed that FEMA knew it was the healthcare was the number one issue, and that was Leslie Pacey telling News Nation. And Pacey is an investigator with the Government Accountability Project who sued to get these documents when FEMA refused to hand them over. Nicola, that is shocking information.
I covered this extensively on the White Rabbit. So the reason they didn't go down there for 7 months is because vinyl chloride is in the air, and it's basically now coated the inside of everyone's lungs with sort of plastic, something extremely heinous and toxic. And I was sharing footage from the area with, you would call it a creek in Australia, a stream, a river. And you could literally see, almost as if someone had dropped oil on the rivers, that there wasn't any river, any stream, any waterfall, any lake, anything anywhere that didn't have that multicolored kind of oily diesel film on it. And that include the reservoirs and, people's drinking water. And it just, for me, it went to show that the Biden administration didn't give a crap about Americans. They really didn't care. And it almost felt like a terror attack. I don't know what's going to come out. Chemicals and toxins have been moved around on rail for a very long time. And the reason it's been moved around on rail is because most of the railways in America are owned by Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett has become very rich, moving around lots of oil and diesel and petrol and chemicals. Now, in the first Trump administration, Trump wanted to build the pipeline, the big old pipeline that would, various pipelines that would move oil and chemicals around underground, and they wouldn't need to be moved around by rail anymore. And I think it was the first day, and the first thing that Biden did is he got rid of that pipeline. And there were pieces of this pipeline and the machinery required sitting on the sides of roads and hills waiting to go into the ground. And I think the thing they got sold on the American equivalent of like Gumtree, it got sold on Craigslist, just sold off all the components. Anyone who wants some, come and get some. And because they wanted chemicals moving around on rail, because if you ever wanted to target anywhere in a country, a particular town, a particular area, how better than sending down something toxic, explosive, flammable, and poisonous by rail and having it crash wherever you want it to crash? We live in a dangerous world, Jason.
We feel like we're getting a little bit closer when you can get something like that come to pass. You wonder what the FBI will do next in terms of launching a new investigation, or is this just a compiling of pressure on the previous Biden administration?
That was a Republican state as well, by the way. They were Republican voters. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you would expect that there will be action that will be taken now, certainly in Ohio, and it is the state that Vivek Ramaswamy is now running for governor. So it's very interesting that is now front and center at that point. So we watch and we'll see what happens there in the development. Now, in another disturbing story, and it turns out that it may well be that the person involved is suffering from a mental illness, but I'm going to deliver this for you now. Here's some photographs from the terracotta warriors in China. So a tourist has climbed over a fence, jumped into a section of this world-famous display of China's terracotta army, damaging 2 ancient clay warriors. The 30-year-old was visiting the museum housing the army in the city of Xi'an on Friday, climbed over the guardrail and the protective net and jumped. Public security officials said in a statement. He was found to be suffering from mental illness and the case is under investigation. He pushed and pulled the clay warriors and 2 were damaged to varying degrees. He was controlled by security personnel. The pit he jumped up into is 5.4 metres deep. According to the museum's website, it was built around 209 BC to stand guard over the tomb of the first emperor. The 8,000-strong terracotta army is one of China's most important archaeological discoveries and considered a symbol of ancient artistic and military sophistication. Crazy. It's just like how it doesn't matter what your mental health status is, but what possesses somebody to want to jump into something like that and try and destroy something that's 2,000 years old. Beggars belief.
Well, I don't know what his mental, was it a he? I'm assuming it was a he. Well, I don't know what their mental capacity was or state when they jumped into that pit, but I can tell you now, doing that in communist China, I would imagine is an extremely bad idea.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Now, we've learnt of an actor of, people will know if you've been following TV shows like Boardwalk Empire, Daredevil and Gotham. Devon Hargis has died at the age of 41. He's looking quite fit there. Hargis passed away last week at Mount Sinai West Hospital in New York City from an illness after he was diagnosed with cancer in February, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Nicola, these stage 4 cancers that are appearing in young people that we've been mocked and ridiculed for pointing out, and Dr. William Macus probably leads the world in pointing these out, turbo cancer. But for young people, this is what Macus said to me in an interview on TNT a year or so ago, when he said to me that the stage 4 cancers affecting young people that are popping up so quickly have never been documented before. This is an entirely new phenomenon, and where he is pointing that finger directly at the 4 letters that spell the share price of that company Moderna is where we think it's coming from.
You're imagining it, Jason. You're imagining it. You must know that you're imagining it. We're all imagining it. We've been deluding ourselves that this hasn't always been the case, that children aren't suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 cancer or having heart attacks in the womb before they're even born. We've imagined all that because the powers that be would like us to realize that their remedies are safe and effective. And even those that have been badly affected and now have the possibility of an awakening are defending it. On Friday, we did our story about Magda Zabansky, and she's come out with a ragey post. I would consider it a rant. I think it's fair enough, and everyone can have a rant. Have your rant, Magda. She didn't like people answering to her rant, and in it, on her X account, she said, "I never pushed vaccines. Why would I? I'm not a doctor." And the response to her post by Australians is truly staggering. Now, on Friday, we also had Graham Hood on the show. And we were all discussing, and Graham was suggesting that he thinks it's possibly 10% of Australians that are awake. It is way more than 10%. And as I said, it's not the anti-vaxxers, it's the no more vaxxers that are waking up now. They have woken a sleeping giant. Go and look at the comments under Magda Zabansky's rant, her post saying she didn't push vaccines, from the people who believed her at the time. And that is a fantastic barometer of how people, at least in Australia, are feeling about what's going on.
Was there any suggestion from Magda Zabansky that her cancer is related to the
God, no.
It's interesting, isn't it? So we now have an argument of ideas against this. what is scary for most people is that if they do suspect it, will they go, as Hoodie referred to, into denial, pretending that it doesn't, like we've all been talking about, or do you try and do something about it? As he said, you've kind of got to get out there, and once you can acknowledge a problem, you can deal with it. But
she said she was being a good citizen, Jason. That's part of her rant. I was being a good citizen, right?
Well,
so I asked.
Go on.
I asked her, I said, I've been a good citizen, as well, what I consider to be a good citizen, asking people to err on the side of caution. And I said, may I ask, were you paid to be a good citizen? Because I certainly wasn't paid to be a good citizen, because, of course, she was employed by the Dan Andrews government to do various commercials promoting vaccination, promoting lockdowns, promoting masking. And then it felt like someone who was known to her said, none of your damn business. You're just a cooker and a conspiracy theorist. Now, why is it none of our business to find out whether she was paid to be a good citizen, Jason?
Well, on the Today Show interview from the other day, she said that she was paid, but immediately donated that money to the Red Cross. And the sum of $2,000 was mentioned, which seems like a very small amount that you would pay somebody of Magda Szubanski's stardom in this country. Like, she's well known, so you would think that's quite a paltry amount of money to be paid. So who knows what was going on there? Karl Stefanovic said, well, you don't need to justify it, and the other presenter said something along the lines of, well, everyone's got to be able to earn money, etc. Well, that's right, but
not us. No, they don't want us to earn. This is part of the responses from Australians. I got called a cooker and a conspiracy theorist, the usual rubbish, and they were like, you don't get paid because you're insane and you're just a cooker. No, we weren't allowed. I wasn't allowed to get paid to empty bins, to be a dinner lady, to be a checkout girl, to work in a factory, to do literally anything, a cleaner. I wouldn't have been allowed to be paid to do any of those things because I didn't do the things that these celebrities were recommending. So they advocated for us to lose our homes, potentially our children, because people lost their children because they were living in cars. And these celebrities are culpable. They are responsible because they abused the trust of the very people who'd put them on that platform to start with.
Why were we the bad people? I don't quite understand it. So we weren't. Thank you. We weren't getting paid. We were literally shining a light to protect all individuals by saying, please make an informed choice. That was what the website we created was about, was 1 million mums for informed consent. We simply want you to know what you're putting into your body and to understand exactly what this virus is all about. That's it. Ultimately, 1 million mums for informed consent, the website, when it was up and running, led to the biggest influx of inquiry about homeschooling. That's what it became. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I jumped onto homeschooling. Yeah.
Yeah, for the same reason. But that's a scenario. Again, I don't understand why you can then call people a cooker, which is a terribly derogatory insult. But ironically, it's.
I am a cooker. I'm quite a good cook.
Yeah, but the term cooker is meant to say that you're affected by drugs, right? To put it very mildly.
Oh, is it? Oh gosh, yeah, I didn't know.
Right, and that's why you can't make. That's why you're stupid. That's the point of it. But how ironic. How
Aren't
ironic
they
that these
affected by drugs? Hang on, they're the ones injecting drugs they know nothing about. But what? You've just enlightened me. Jason Olbourne, are you serious that the people who would inject mainline the way you do with heroin into their veins, something they don't know what it is, an experimental drug, have the nerve to tell people who've never done that, never injected a drug, cookers?
Well, I'm going to give you the definition from Urban Dictionary right now. I'll put it up on the screen for you. Let's just have a look in real time. Loading it up now. Takes a couple of seconds.
Good.
Isn't it ironic? So let's just load it here for you.
I like getting an education live on air.
To support what you're saying. So here it is, Urban Dictionary. Cooker. A cooker is a spoon or a bottle or cap to cook drugs such as heroin, coke, meth to make it more pure and for junkies to get more high. It's supposed to cook the junk out of the junk and bring it more qualities.
Wow.
You put the dope in the cooker, cook it good, and you mix it around, you draw up the rig and slam it. They call you a cooker. And so the
Well,
irony
if you
is
haven't got a job because you're unvaccinated, you can't pay rent, you can't eat food, you can't do anything. You certainly can't afford any drugs, I would have imagined.
so these are the people that arrived at the car park of a hardware store to be injected by experimental drugs from a stranger.
Yep.
And they call us the cookers. I rest my case.
When I heard, Jason, that it had to be kept at minus 70 degrees, I mean, it's Australia, remember, right? It gets cold. Well, in Victoria, it gets cold in the winter. It's cold now. And it gets hot in the summer. They call that climate change. We call that weather. I was hoping in the hot months that they'd sort of left it out and that things got damaged. And I believe they did. That's why some people are okay. You know, it was not kept at its optimum temperature, let's say. But I remember seeing at a disused hand car wash place in Ferntree Gully, people were queuing up in their cars around the corner for miles, causing major traffic problems to go through. And there were what looked like these young migrant people. And I was contacted by one of them, and she said, I'm telling you for your podcast, I'm actually from Vietnam and I'm a pot washer and I know nothing about medicine or nursing or injections. And the government paid me to inject people and their children and their babies in that car wash in Ferntree Gully. And I was just hoping that because it was sunny, I could see the sun burning down on it, that, you know, these things were sort of rendered useless. But the mindset, you know, simply to be driving by and looking at the faces of the people queuing up to do something they knew nothing about and could not understand. I didn't understand it. That's why I stayed away. I wasn't saying, hey, I know more than you. I understand this and it's dangerous. Don't do it. I was saying we as a collective, we don't know what the hell this stuff is. These people, including my own family members, older family members in the UK, right? Let's take my parents as an example. These are people that would never even do a party drug. There's no snort of cocaine. There's no popping of an ecstasy pill. There's nothing. There's certainly no, you know, mainlining into the vein drugs. It was the people that would never have done party drugs who were doing the hardest drug probably ever conceived in a lab by humanity, just like that. Just like that. Why? Because Dan Andrews told them to. My God, what else would you do if Dan Andrews told you to? It was that thing we talked about last week, that show Push with Darren Brown. Push the old man off the top of the building. What is mind control capable of? Well, you know what? Now we know what it's capable of, and they won't admit it. They won't admit that they were wrong or it's the reason they're sick.
And here we are. We literally have Magda Szubanski. We literally have Devon Hargis passed away. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of cases that we have covered. We've got the stories from the sporting fields, soccer fields, etc., AFL stars. It keeps going and going and going. And we don't quite get to what the solution is. It is just unbelievable, isn't it? The reality of what's really going on. But at the same time, we've got at least some action in the US with that video we played last week of RFK Jr. alongside Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Marty Makari, that getting rid of COVID vaccines for young, healthy children and pregnant women. That's a start.
It should be everyone. It should be everyone. It's a start. It should be everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've just put up on the screen there, the Daily Australian at Gmail, if you want to share a story or ask us to cover something. It's always interesting. Or if you want to have a recording of something that you've got to say in your voice, a segment we can set up for you. Still waiting for people to send that through. But equally, we encourage you to share, to like and to comment on this post and others as well. Very, very important that we do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Do contact us. We do read them. I know we've received some and we do look at those. And thank you for the links and for the learning and all the stuff you get us to look at. I'm halfway through a massive podcast from the UK. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's with some French guy and it's absolutely fascinating. And it is actually focusing on this this genocide by subordination, subversion, of cultures, and it truly is fascinating. And I've always said that we need to listen to our old people more, and that's why it upset me really that our old people fell for what the politicians were saying at this time in history. It's such a massive betrayal. It is treasonous. It was such a horrible thing to do. And then you've got characters like Jacinta Ardern, who are still out there. And she's such a terrible talker. She's still out there with her big teeth trying to say to people, we were trying to do the best that we could, and she's got a terrible accent. No offense to Kiwis, but hers is particularly heinous with the teeth. Telling people, it seems like New Zealand's woken up, by the way. They've got some feisty politicians going on over there right now saying they've had enough and they want their fossil fuels back. Go for it. But, she's still out there trying to preach to people that she was this goddess that helped save people's lives. At least Dan Andrews has had the decency to piss off, shut up, go off and try and make some more money with his China mates and leave us the hell alone. Right. But because he'd have some balls to be on a speaking tour or be doing after dinner speeches saying, I was so fantastic for Victoria. He knows he wasn't. So he's gone away quietly. But Jacinda Ardern, come on, go away.
This week on the Today Show, they are featuring Jacinda Ardern and Bill Clinton. Can you believe it? Can you do the best? Right at the time when things are coming out, the timing couldn't be better.
They must have some money because those two have massive fees, Jason. Massive.
And so, yeah, very interesting, isn't it? So how they're going to even wake Bill Clinton up to turn up is another story altogether. And the same with Ardern. But there she is, siding with the king. With Prince William, the globalists do what globalists will do. Very interesting. Yeah, there you go. Extraordinary, isn't it? The stage is set. The stage is most certainly set. What happens now with Russia, it seems that Trump is at arm's length. No one can say that Trump and Russia are on the same team. We saw that from last week. So what is Trump's next move? Are we watching nuclear war unload before our very eyes, or will there be another takedown? It remains to be seen. Will there be a walking back, and will the world stop at the brink of nuclear attack after Zelensky calling for supposedly peace? The talks are meant to be in Istanbul, and the contrary, he then sends an attack on Russia, trying to blow up some 40-odd planes in the process. Will Greta Thunberg make it to Palestine and to Gaza and to bring much-needed supplies, or is she just inflaming the situation? Will we see the hostages released over there in Gaza this week? Funny times ahead, and at the same time here, we watch on as we learnt over the weekend that One Nation have ended up with 4 senators in the federal parliament, with Malcolm Roberts being returned, Tyrone Whitten in WA, and Warwick Stacey in New South Wales. So people now asking, was Craig Kelly crazy to leave One Nation? Because if he was still there, he would have been elected as a One Nation senator in the federal parliament. And instead, the Libertarians were unable to get much support at all in New South Wales, and Craig Kelly's out. So very interesting times here. So whilst One Nation only averaged about 4.5% of the vote, picked up 3 extra senators. So overall, the balance, there are more senators now in Parliament than there were before the election, but they all happen to be at One Nation at this stage, after Senator Rennick is now going to be a private civilian from July after his 6-year term comes to an end, Nicola.
Well, Craig Kelly tells far too much truth, and he's a bit of a bulldog, so he wouldn't have worked with One Nation, I shouldn't wonder, because I'm going to make a prediction that those 4 senators from One Nation do absolutely nothing and are worse than useless. They will go along to get along. They will support things or abstain from things that you really want them to vote on. I'm very pleased that these peace talks are happening in Istanbul. Istanbul is the most incredible city, formerly Constantinople. I worked there for many, many years as a model. And what's interesting about Istanbul historically is you've got the Christian side over here and a road, and then you've got the Muslim side, and they are so different. And I took a lot of time going into the mosques and the churches, and it really pulls at your heartstrings about the history of us as human beings. So I think it's very poignant that the peace talks are there. And if you're asking yourself why you feel so strange about what's going on now between Ukraine and Russia as it's emerging, that it's really NATO and Russia, and this is why Russia didn't want NATO and Ukraine on their doorstep, because they knew that this was the truth about how NATO felt about them. I'm sure there were some Russian spies somewhere giving them the lowdown on that. If you're asking yourself why you feel strange about that situation, as I do, it's because NATO is us. NATO is you and me. And as far as I'm concerned, I do not condone or support, not in my name, a war with Russia and Russians, particularly not over areas of Ukraine like Crimea and Donbass, where the majority of the people identify as Russian in a world where we're told we can identify as anything. So if you feel strange about NATO, us going to war with a country not in our name, that's possibly why. We will keep you informed on this show. So thank you for watching The Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olbourne. We'll have more updates for you tomorrow.